Kelly,
Great to see you.
nice to see you too. I thought that I was going to be able to like go freshen up, go to the bath, but I was kind of so intensely watching the lecture that I sat glued. And I'm really glad that you could come on and talk some more. There's, oh my gosh, there's so many things. The number one thing that comes to mind is you mentioning that they now make these penis models to that squirt secrete things.
Right, that's true.
Where is that?
I actually had a teacher provide me with a magazine brochure that schools typically order additional resources, curricula, tools. If you're a PE teacher, you might order, resources for PE class from this website, but from this particular company. But they have a whole gamut of different models that are used for this in class. I don't know how much they get orders for it, but it's certainly something to be aware of.
Actually, I have something that I could put up that falls right in line with that, because there was a big story that was out, and I'll show.
Oh, you know what?
Here's a model. Here's one. What?
Let me send this to you. I tweeted it out February 26th of 2023.
Yes.
I'm going to send this to you right now.
And I can put it up. Right now, this is the condom educator kit. And you know this group. So Advocates for Youth, in their curriculum, they have a link to this. So, and I'll bring up that image, but they have a link to this website so that teachers can, the educators, like right here. So one wooden penis model right there. And they provide a link, and that's where the link goes. So that the original image was from a classroom in Columbine High School in Colorado. And it was a freshman, basically comprehensive sexuality education class. And you can even see in the backdrop, all of the talking points were hanging up from this like kit. So,
right. Yeah. So, ETR, Education Training Research, they got their start. They're located in Santa Cruz County of California. They create the CSE curricula called Health Smart. And they actually got their start from the Santa Cruz Planned Parenthood. So that's ETR also gets, in the past, they definitely federal grant monies to do what they do. And I've talked with parents, moms in Texas, who have told me that the marketing for CSE in a state like Texas is going to be completely different than how they market CSE in California, and that there's definitely a little bit of a difference if you're researching and paying attention to the messaging that goes out, that it can often be different based on the audience that they're.
Are you saying it'll be more they'll try to appeal to understanding that maybe this area is a little more conservative, and so maybe they're going to say that we also do abstinence education.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, the states that will refer to, for example, comprehensive health education versus comprehensive sexuality education, or even family life curricula.
I've heard
so family life sounds so nice.
And there's
then
something, and that has aspects of CSC in it, family life.
And then even the organization SHAPE, which is particularly for health education, SHAPE held a conference not that long ago. I want to say it was at the earlier part of this year, it may have been, but SHAPE also works to advance comprehensive sexuality education. So that's important for parents, PE teachers, everybody to be aware of. There's plenty of good teachers out there that are not for this. I can't imagine having to be tasked as a teacher with having to teach young people this.
So I'm going to, because I'm going to share, what I often do is I'll just kind of go through my X account, because there's so much on there, and it's easier to pull that up. But
Yeah.
and I know you know this image, but so you can see here, this is an image direct. I mean, look at that. This is from CSE. I know about this because actually maybe now almost 3 years ago, it was discovered that this curriculum was in Wisconsin, and in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. This image is a direct image from the Advocates for Youth 3 R's curriculum that was going to be used for 2nd through 4th graders. And in the curriculum, in the teacher portion, the notes to the teacher said that the students should get in groups of 6, and they should not be sex specific. So they should be girls and boys together. They should have Post-it notes. And then this image would be up, kind of on the chalkboard, or if it's a whiteboard. And then the kids would either use Post-it notes, or if it's a whiteboard, they would, use a dry erase marker, and they'd have to label all 6 parts of the external female anatomy. And I'm not going to say all the names here, but you can see that, and that X was put there by myself. So that is not, the kids would get the full image. And I just find that just shocking.
I remember back when we were going to the Department of Education and challenging the health framework updates in 2019. And there was a book for 3rd graders, and the book was an illustrated cartoon of a man and a woman. Basically, it was the cartoon of just the genitalia already having sex, and then it showed, the little sperm swimming. But I'll never forget talking with some young people who were there at the California Department of Education as activists in support of the health framework. And they dropped a couple expletives when they saw what was being, one of the moms had a big poster up showing the image while the mom in front, or the parent in front, was talking about that particular book. But you could see it live streamed, and even the activists who were there said, "What the expletive is that?" Yep. And said it a couple times. And I said, well, that's what you're here to support. That's part of the health framework. That's for 3rd grade. Yep. They were upset by it. And, it just goes to show that there's a lot of young people who are captured believing that they're doing something for inclusive rights, is what they're told. And oftentimes, I talked about this a little bit in the presentation, is you'll look at people who are really, really trying to promote their ideology, their comprehensive sexuality education through storytelling, and they want to share the stories and experiences of people. And without seeing the evidence, stories are definitely people's experiences or stories are compelling for some, but they only go so far. The evidence, like what you're showing us right now, and what that particular day did for those young, either high school or college kids, was they were faced with the real evidence. And so the evidence is really what
these images are always a lot. I always find someone who's never seen, like, here, the gender unicorn. And so this graphic is by TSER, the Trans Student Educational Resources. They teach children that their feelings and behaviors are a more important indicator of their identity rather than their body. But so here's names, So these are all of the different organizations that are the Trojan horse organizations that come into schools and all the radical ideologies are injected. Welcoming schools. And what maybe like really briefly, what is welcoming schools? Is it, because it sounds good, right? Welcoming schools, belonging.
Right.
Isn't that nice? What is it?
Ultimately, a lot of these programs like this one is designed to instruct young people in gender ideology. And as we see today, I mean, just like we talked about how there's CSE and then how that develops into this advancement of these school-based health centers underneath the WISC model of community schools, you have an idea that could potentially be multifaceted as far as what it does. But if a young person starts to question their very identity or starts to think, well, maybe I am this or maybe I'm this, well, there's a whole industry waiting to make money off of that young person's health. Ultimately,
Yeah.
There's a whole agenda looking to make them lifelong patients that harms them. So these ideas, they're all, again, the marketing is incredible. It's interesting with Advocates for Youth. I see them there on that screen, but it is interesting that they changed their name because they were the Center for Population Options. And that is a piece of this that, again, this is a multifaceted agenda that does have some history with trying to reduce the population. For sure.
So that's something, put a pin in, I wanted to get back to, but Welcoming Schools is part of the Human Rights Campaign. And I have here, like, this is a gender inclusive classroom guide, a year-long curriculum to create safe, supportive, and affirming classrooms. So this was gender inclusive classrooms 23 to 24. They go month by month. I mean, they cite books that you could read, themes, boards, then links to tons of other materials, links to downloadable posters, printable signs, PDFs, pronoun charts. And again, this is preschool. And I will show this more at some other point because no one can see what I'm looking at. But needless to say that this is a very comprehensive curriculum, and an educator can get this free of charge, and it's sent PDF, and then they can get free books and materials. And Welcoming Schools is a packet provided by the Human Rights Campaign. And what I have seen in Wisconsin with our state education, and I've seen it in other states too, is they'll say these materials are free. Isn't this great? We can use them. They link them up on board docs. They put them up on the websites. And, a lot of school districts are struggling with cash. So they think, okay, I've got to hit these DEI goals. I'll just use this material. It's free. They don't really even look at it. They just pass it along. And then once, like you said, they see the evidence, they see what's in there, they're genuinely surprised. But by then, the Trojan horse has entered the school. There are woke activist educators. I have seen even as few as just one in an entire school district that just brings that district down to its knees because what they start to do. Now, Trump is in office. We've got executive orders. We've got the Department of Education under Secretary Linda McMahon saying, you got to stop this. They've now, ended the whole Biden Title IX definition that includes gender identity. Yet the woke persist. All of these things that you see here, safe schools, GSA clubs, rainbow clubs, advocates for youth, GLSEN, they are all still operating. And I know because I attend their trainings, I get their emails, I get their texts several times a day. They are operating in schools right now red states, blue states, they persist. So what can we do, Kelly?
I think we have to continue to inform and equip people, show people the evidence. I think it's impactful to have, if you feel comfortable opening your home, if you've obtained some helpful information, share that information with others in your house. Start to educate and inform people, because a lot of people, they don't have time to research all of the history and follow all the emails. And like you said, you're getting texts, emails. They may not even know all of the organizations or where this originates. And people have so much bandwidth to really, I'm going to grab something here, process.
I know I'm grabbing my stuff to like all my different, like this is a new book, Stay Angry Little Girl, Pride Puppy. I think I don't have the mirroring on, but keep when you see new books, make it aware. I think keep it simple too. When we have been fighting this, if you get too deep into the weeds, then people tune out. So we kept the Amaze videos, exactly what you said when you were talking to Melissa. The Amaze videos are so disturbing. And and there's a weird feeling to it, because even sometimes there's some of the videos where the content, like how many times is too much to masturbate. Now that right off the bat, ding, 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 this is crazy. But there are other where it's subtle, like you said, where there's mom and dad, but dad is feminine, mom is butch. The kids are all different, like races, and one, and you can't tell the boys from the girls. It's not the way the books used to look, where, you had mom and dad were clearly identified as male, female, and the kids weren't, ambiguous. And so you see that a lot, right? Like there's many messages.
And a lot of these people don't really value the importance of childhood development and the imagination of children. And so I remember meeting this mom who was coming with us to challenge CSE, and these parents of these kindergartners were not notified that the teacher was going to do this coming out celebration for one of the kindergartners in class, and what that did to the other children who are very, very young. I mean, these are kids who believe in all kinds of stuff.
They do tooth fairy. They pick their nose and they eat the boogers. I mean, they're not.
I mean, they think that when St. Patrick's Day is celebrated at school, that there's really leprechauns that went to their classroom. Little kids have just this vast imagination. But what that exercise did for this kindergarten class is that little kids were now having trouble sleeping because of the fact that they were worried that they were going to wake up the next day. A little girl was worried she was going to wake up the next day a boy. Mommy, I'm scared to go to sleep because what if I wake up tomorrow and I'm a boy? And these are things that the people promoting these ideas, they don't value the actual health or mental health or longevity or relationships or life of these young people. It's a completely different mentality and viewpoint of a human itself. While we were talking about different things, I grabbed this. This I first exposed years ago. So I was sent this by a teacher, but this is the I'm Here badge. And it's given out by the largest teachers union in the country, the National Education Association. It comes in a little sleeve. And in the sleeve, it basically instructs the wearer, because you can put this on your lanyard at school. And what this does is it instructs them that if they're not a safe person to not wear this, and so it's creating already an idea. I mentioned this in our presentation tonight. If you have a safe person or a safe space or a trusted person or whatever it may be, you're automatically creating the belief system that if you do not conform to our way of thinking, you are going to be labeled unsafe, untrusted, this is an unsafe person, unsafe space, etc. So they're using this as a manipulation tactic. But that's the back of it. NEA's LGBTQ plus caucus. There is a QR code with a variety of resources,
Wow.
including a Santa Clara all ages transgender clinic. But you can see, yeah, NEA, this has CTA, that's the California Teachers Association on the back. So that's what they're encouraging.
Like that image right here, like every color of the flag, but on the back, wow.
And then there's teachers that will encourage students, minors, to go and approach other teachers that don't have the badge or don't have the signage in their classroom. And they'll say, we want to meet with you because we demand that you put this up and let us know that this classroom is a safe space. Things like this are happening.
That's like Gestapo-ish. That's like so gross. Like to have kids go ratting out adults and like,
It's actually really, it's sad and it's disturbing the ways in which the kids are being used as leverage for their political agenda. I mean, we're seeing an increase of students that are being taught through, for example, in California, the State Seal of Civic Engagement program, to go out and register voters, to serve on their school boards as a school board member, typically a school board member that can't vote, but all of these political activist things. Whereas I remember when I was in high school, when you were probably in high school, Scarlett, what were we doing in our free time when we were finished with our homework? We were hanging out with our friends. We were going roller skating. We were going to sports games.
Yeah.
We were hanging out. We were going to the beach.
Like this. No, teachers were never trying to get us engaged in this kind of activism. Never. Like, I'm sure that they were not like Reagan, Bush conservatives, but then it was like, that stuff's for the home when you come to school. Maybe they talk about politics in a way where you're like, oh, because my parents were very conservative. Well, they're not conservative, but they didn't cross the line. There is no line anymore. This is crazy. I wanted to share, because I have a very similar story, and I wanted to put this book up, where a parent contacted me, a mom, and she said that after a kindergarten class in an area, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, which is a suburban area, it is more conservative, but a teacher had read this book, or a school librarian had read this book to the kids during library time. And if you have young kids, that going to the library in school when they're younger is a treat. Once or twice a week, they go to the library, they get to go to the resource center, they get to pick out books. And if they return them, bring them with, then they can get new books. And the kids love this. I used to volunteer in the school library, and it was so much fun. I could read to the kids and help them pick out books and check out books. They loved it. This was a real treat. So this was one of the books that was read, and her son came home and said, Mom, I'm scared. I'm scared that if I go to sleep and I wake up, I might turn into a girl. And she's like, that can't happen. And he's like, yes, it can. Boys can be girls. Boys can turn into girls, and I don't want to, and I'm scared. And so she asked me, what should I do? What should I do? And I was like, honestly, like, if it were me, I'd be done. I would not send my child back into that classroom until I did some serious investigating, and maybe never again. I am not like risking the fact that a staff member was so blatantly pushing this on kids, scaring them, really, really frightens me. They're so young. And this boy genuinely thought that this could happen to him. That he could wake up and suddenly he wants to wear a dress and he wants to be a boy. And it was like contagious.
Yeah. Well, and truly, I mean, one of the things I talked about in our presentation tonight, we see all these things that all of these ideologies, CSE, gender ideology within it, and its correlation into other subjects in the library and books, what it is promoting and teaching, but is also so much of what is missing. There is so much missing, and there is a complete disregard in this curricula for the beauty and value of a child, of those childhood years and teen years. I remember being told this by my parents when I was growing up, is that you have, assuming you have a full, long lifespan, you have such a short time in your life where you get to be a child. And it's such a gift. You have the rest of your life to be an adult. And what is missing from these very people that say they're the proponents of kindness, of conflict resolution, of safety, they use these words, compassion, is that there's really actually a disregard for the value of a child, of a teenager. It's a complete disregard of the family. It's a complete disregard of caring for a child's health and well-being. It's a complete disregard for assuming things about the child. And it's oftentimes just treating these young people as if, I'm just going to do what I want and they have to accept whatever I'm teaching them, like these kids that then go to bed and they worry they're going to wake up the next day as something else. And what they're doing to kids, they don't care. They don't actually value these kids. They just care about their agenda more than anything else. And that's heartbreaking, because true compassion, true empathy, true love seeks to place others above yourself, not in a way that's disregarding or diminishing of oneself, but in a way to esteem somebody else above yourself. What a beautiful thing that is. And that is what parents do. And this is also...
parents don't have discussions about how many times is too many to masturbate one day with their little kids. You can see, this is a tiny sample, but 6th and 7th graders, how to use condoms correctly. My daughter's in 7th grade. The thought that there is an educator or a Planned Parenthood representative in a classroom and my daughter would have to sit through this next to a boy. First of all, she would run. Okay, I've raised my, she would scream and run out of that classroom. But just the thought of their kids, my daughter's age, sitting through this when they don't want to hear it, they're unprepared. It makes my blood, Kelly, my blood just boils. I just imagine, I can't believe the nerve of these adults that think that they have the right to do this, to put on demonstrations like this, and they don't even need, like they scoff at opt-outs. Oh, well, I'm sorry that you're such a prude, Well, you know what? I think it's normal and common sense to not want this in 6th and 7th grade. But my position is, and I don't know what you think about that, but if Planned Parenthood could come in with these condoms and wooden penis models and talk about how many times is too many to masturbate in a day, why can't a Catholic priest come in and teach abstinence education? What is the difference? The idea that Planned Parenthood can come in and just as an outside spectator, oh, we've got no interest. We're just going to come in and teach this curriculum out of the goodness of our hearts. We have no bias. Give me a break. Give me a break. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. You don't have any bias. Of course you have bias, because your hope is that these condoms don't work and that some girl ends up pregnant, or we can't call her a girl, because God knows males can be pregnant, men can be pregnant too. And that's part of Advocates for Youth. You're not allowed to say men, women. You have to say inseminated persons and persons with a vulva, all this garbage that they're saying to our children. It's crazy town. Like it's a clown car crazy town, and I for one am sick of it. I'm sorry I had to go off on that rant.
No, I mean, And what's interesting is that they often present these ideas under the guise of safety, but the way in which they're taught is oftentimes accelerated in the whole of the curricula. And what I mean by that is from analyzing a variety of these curricular materials, the actual quote unquote safety is quickly glossed over, and it's done usually in such a way as to, again, reduce a child's natural modesty. I'll never forget when I was in high school, that organization came into my health class, and they had various students come into the front of the class. So we have these two guest speakers, both women, and the rest of my peers are there, and we've never met these two women, don't know them at all. And students are being asked to take the model that was provided by that organization, lift it into the erect placement, and then put the condom on. But it was all done very quickly. It was all done very giggly. These are not actual ways to ensure. I mean, you think about how reading is taught today.
Yeah.
You take any subject that is actually for a purpose, reading comprehension, if you're actually teaching something about health and safety, you think you'd want to do it in a more professional, educational way, because then your audience would, quote, be safe. But the reality is a lot of these programs, the way in which they're done is the most important piece to pay attention to, because it's often a way to reduce a child's natural, healthy boundaries. And it's not actually a way to ensure their safety. But because they did it, they can check that box and say, oh, we taught them quote unquote safety. Now, that lesson that you just shared, I think it said 6th and 7th graders. I think about everyday 6th and 7th graders. If you're teaching kids, teenagers, how to clean something at home or how to use the washing machine. Maybe you purchase a new washer and dryer and you're showing the kids how to use it. It might take a couple times of them learning the different settings on the new washer and dryer to understand even how to do that, let alone, and they'll come back to you, Mom, Dad, like, how do I use the washer and dryer? Like, what button do I press?
I don't know how.
What do I have to do for this load? And, does it need to be, how do I choose cold water or delicate cycle?
Yeah.
But we're talking about their health. And this particular topic is just quickly done on their digital sex ed curriculum that they're working to advance. That curricula is this very short video that speeds up. It's actually rather quickly discussed and shown. And there's this quick review, and there is no way a teenager is going to be like, oh yeah, now I've got it. I've been able to completely understand how this works, and I can do this if I'm in this situation. No, they are checking a box, in my opinion, and they are just doing it in a way that, again, if they can be in so many schools, they're going to get money for that. That money goes from the government down into the school district and out to their organization. And if they really cared, quote, as they do, about inclusive health, safety of young people, and it's we're the ones keeping them safe. If that's really the case, then make all your content open access.
Yes.
If that's really the case, then why is it so hard to see your curriculum? What about all the kids that don't have access to your curriculum because we can only pay you, and school districts can only pay you exorbitant amounts of money to access your health and safety content that you oftentimes develop with grants from the government?
And yes, that's what I wanted to say. How dare they withhold this curriculum when it's being paid for by federal dollars? And we know that because right now in the Congress, they're going through the process of reconciliation. And right now there are many Republicans, and we are encouraging this. So please call to action, contact your congressman and demand that they defund Planned Parenthood, because Planned Parenthood is the largest provider of sex education in U.S. public schools. I think 80%, upwards of 80% of the materials that are in your classroom or the instructors or in some way Planned Parenthood is behind it's because it's not just sex education, right? It's they even, yes, they get into abstinence because a lot of states like Wisconsin require that the schools talk about abstinence, and they go over that real fast. Like they don't want to dwell on that too often. They laugh it off. You made a really good comment. They make the people that are waiting until marriage or maybe waiting until they're more mature look like dorks. They have pimples, they have braces, they're not cool. And then the people that are having sex are all they're pretty, they're cool, they're part of the in crowd. All these subliminal messages to kids that it's just not cool. There's even one Amaze video where what was it called? It was like so something about pregnancy, and it had some catchy title. But the teenage girl was pregnant, and they show the clinic, which is supposed to be reminiscent of a pro-life, a Catholic clinic where they encourage the women to keep their babies, the crisis pregnancy centers, and they put a big X through it, and they made the person standing outside look evil and sinister, and it was like scary. Don't go there. Oh, don't go there. And then they had the bright, shiny, like Planned Parenthood. Oh, it was so pretty. Oh, that's where the nice people are. The messaging there could not be more clear.
Yeah. It's really true. Yeah. It's there's marketing in all of this. I'll never forget. I know we're talking about CSE, but this is another topic that will probably definitely, I would say, relate to CSE is education technology. When we were at Moms for Liberty, Philadelphia, the hotel where we were at was hosting a lot of attendees from this ISTE education conference. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education. Many of the attendees there at that conference were companies that were showcasing their ed tech. Well, in the midst of being in the lobby, there was these long tables, and I was seated there, and this whole company just happened to be there, and they were having a meeting that was very loud, and they're literally seated right next to me. But in their meeting, they were talking about, in review from being at ISTE, that for their ed tech program, they wanted to add into their technology the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and that they wanted to work on marketing more to the school district, school board members, and staff, and then prepare the messaging to get their buy-in and then the parents and public's buy-in. And this is how, I mean, I've said this is kind of funny, but if you're late at night and you're flipping channels, lots of times you might come across some as seen on TV infomercial, and a lot of people will go, oh brother, there's the fake clapping audience, there's the little thing that they're trying to sell you, change the channel. But in actuality, that overt marketing is happening with everything with regards to CSE, to these Amaze videos. It's going on. Your kids are being marketed to, you're being marketed to. If you're a school teacher, school board member, etc., you are being marketed to. And I hope that more people would start to have that awareness of the marketing that is being driven their way, the narratives, the storytelling, the graphics, the language used. I mean, just the way in which, for example, comprehensive sexuality education is marketed as inclusive sex ed. So that automatically frames it as, if you're against it, you're against inclusiveness, and you're exclusive, you're pushing people away, and you're some kind of hateful person. So that's by design. It's no different than the card I showed that talks about the safe person, safe space, that automatically means that if you don't have this badge, you don't display this poster, you're unsafe. Your space, your classroom is unsafe. If you're against social emotional learning, which is often marketed to teachers and students as conflict resolution, as kindness, as all of those kinds of things, well, then it's automatically creating a narrative so that anything that you try and say is designed to make you look like you're the one going against something that's common sense. And so
I wanted to play, I did find that video, so I'm going to share the screen and play it really fast. Let's see, I got it right here. Here we go.
I don't know what's wrong with me lately. I feel nauseated and I'm so tired all the time. Ooh. Wow. That's a good pickle.
Nauseated? Tired? Pickles. I know what's going on here.
Sex can and should feel good, both physically and emotionally. But sex can also bring concern and worry. Unprotected sex can lead to unplanned pregnancy. If you know someone who's had unprotected sex or they missed their period after having sex, they may be pregnant. Other signs of pregnancy may include sore breasts, nausea or vomiting, mood swings, or feeling very tired. Although having some of these symptoms does not necessarily mean a person is pregnant. To find out if your friend is pregnant, they can take a home pregnancy test.
Hold on, real quick, I want to interject. Did you see that the person vomiting looked like a male?
Yeah.
I mean, so again, the clues, it's vomiting like they're pregnant, clearly like a
These tests are available in grocery stores, drugstores, and local family planning clinics like Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
To take a pregnancy test correctly, make sure to read and follow the directions that come inside the package. Most simply require that the person pees on the stick. If the test is negative, your friend should watch for their period. They may want to take another test in a few days just to make sure. If the home pregnancy test is positive, or if your friend's normal period does not return within 4 weeks, it's important that they talk with a trusted adult and visit a healthcare provider or
again, trusted adult, not parent, trusted adult.
family planning clinic you trust. Be aware that there are some clinics that trick women into coming.
See, look at this. This is a good one. The really real clinic. And then she says they trick.
To them for pregnancy options counseling, but then do not accurately provide all of the information or talk honestly about all of the options open to a pregnant person. There are 3 options open to a person.
Yep. So I'll stop there. You see, that was one where the really real clinic, and then the goofy guy, and they're saying, yeah, they pretend to be a clinic, but they're not going to give you the accurate information, Planned Parenthood. Now that's where you need to go, but don't go to that fake, clinic where they're going to probably tell you to keep your baby. And this, this is for middle school. So you think you're pregnant is a middle school lesson. Why the heck? I mean, now, Kelly, you know that they're going to say, well, yeah, it happens. There are cases where there are abused kids, or some communities, they'll say, where there will be young kids getting pregnant. But why? That is not the norm. But so why do we have to treat every kid like they're from an abusive background with parents that don't care, they're promiscuous, sexually active, and they're getting pregnant in 6th and 7th grade? Why does every kid need to be treated that way when it is a small minority of kids where that might happen? And if it does, that child is in an unsafe situation and teachers are mandatory reporters. This isn't the cause for let's develop a new curriculum. This is let's call the police, let's call CPS, and let's try and get this child into a better environment.
It's total marketing. I mean, what they're doing is they're trying to shape a perspective and a worldview. And sadly, I mean, there's some of these people working in that industry and they think they're being empathetic and helpful and compassionate. And they just don't realize some people know exactly what they're doing. Others don't have an idea of what they're being a part of and the damage that it does.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unleashed with me, Scarlett Johnson, presented by Moms for Liberty. And today I have a very special guest and good friend, Kelly. But first, let's dive in and talk about controversial curriculum and social emotional learning. This is top of mind for me right now, especially at the end of the school year, a time where lots of parents struggle with surveys that are handed out to children. They take them on the computers in their classroom. Lots of times parents that are in the know want to opt their kids out. They try to opt their kids out. Sometimes those opt-outs are honored and sometimes they are not. And we're going to talk about that more later this week with Southeastern Legal Foundation. But parents are often told controversial classroom content is just kindness. It's just wellness. It's just mental health literacy or just consent education. But when parents follow the paper trail, they often find outside vendors, grant funding, activist curriculum, school district resources, surveys, SEL frameworks, and materials that they never saw before. Their children see them first, and if they're lucky, the children will come back and tell the parents about these things. But across the country, wherever you are, there are parents finding out that these labels, this kindness curriculum, this belonging, this inclusion, they change the names, it's not always DEI, can hide a much bigger classroom pipeline. And so today, here to discuss this is my friend, Kelly. So let's bring her on. Hey, Kelly, I'm so glad that you could be here. Kelly Schenkoske, you are, here we got you back again. You are an education researcher, you're an advocate, and host of a podcast, A Time to Stand. And you're a very good friend of me and Moms for Liberty. You've talked to our organization, whether it's at our summits, our national summits, or you have come out to school districts all across the country and chapters, and you try to ring the bell and make parents aware of what's happening in the classroom. So frame the conversation around what parents need to know about controversial curriculum, and tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be this accidental education activist.
Well, it's great to be here, and I am so thankful for you, Scarlett. You're a wonderful friend, as are so many moms and parents across the country. And absolutely, our education system has been transforming for many decades. And we've been observing this, some of us before COVID, some of us as a result of those shutdowns. But what really started my journey was back in 2016. And as I was advocating for some more lunch recess and activity time at school for, at the time, it was my oldest, I then learned that the school district, without talking with parents, had removed approximately 10 minutes of the lunch recess daily to have the kids sitting and encouraging them to empty their minds and to enter into mindfulness meditation, where the principal led them in this exercise using a Tibetan singing bowl. And as a result of that, I immediately, my first thought actually was more sitting in a school day for these little ones that have so much energy, because this was the elementary school day. And upon talking with a teacher and learning about this exercise from a friend that worked at the high school, I met with the principal and started to get some information. And it was in that first meeting and then the subsequent meeting where I realized that I needed to learn everything I could about this new program. And doing such research went not just into reading many documents every night after the kids went to bed, but it ended up more interviewing people in the community and learning really about what this was. And as a result of that, we opted our oldest out of that program. And then when our youngest entered that school, we opted her out as well.
What was the program? How old were your kids?
So our oldest, this was first grade particularly, and then it was K through fifth grade. Mm-hmm. The program was that they were going to be bringing into the school. The mindfulness meditation was more based on just the school district installing this under social emotional learning. Mm-hmm. We were told. And then they were initially talking about bringing in Mind Up curriculum from the actress Goldie Hawn. At our middle school, they were talking about and had brought in a program called the Tapping Solution. So in researching these, I was learning about not just what I was told was calming practices, kindness, conflict resolution. All of those things sound fantastic. Yeah. But I was actually learning about the new age practices of mindfulness meditation and the energy chakras or meridians, in which some tap on their face. And students at the middle school were tapping before the start of some classes and stating affirmations that the teacher led them into. Furthermore,
and these are religious. I mean, these are religious affirmations. This is part of Buddhism or Hindu practices. So, they do have a basis in religion, and public schools should not be bringing in religious prayer meditation into K through 5 schools, period, but especially without parents knowing.
Exactly. And the way that they frame it is they say that they're not doing religious practices. However, it's very clear where it derives from. And what's really interesting to me, in my research, I was watching this conference, and it was this conference on, I believe it was, if I'm remembering correctly, the Wellbeing Project. And in that conference, a man who is actually in Wisconsin at, I believe it's the Center for Healthy Minds, he was talking about meeting with the Dalai Lama many years back, and how the Dalai Lama encouraged he and his colleagues to take his tradition, the Dalai Lama's tradition, mix it with science and spread it everywhere. And this dates back many decades ago.
Wow.
And
You'll have to get me
there-
that information if this is Wisconsin person.
yeah, yeah.
And a lot of people say, oh, what's the harm? But this is religious. This is religious. It would be like saying, let's hand out prayer beads, but we're not going to associate with we're not going to bring in a Catholic priest, but we're going to hand out rosaries and we're going to teach kids Hail Marys. The left would go berserk if trying to do that. Even if you said, well, we're not looking at it in a religious connotation. Well, it is a religious artifact, and going through the prayer and the motions, that is a religious act that is sacred to Catholics. So there's two things going on. You are bringing in religion to kids in a public school, which you are not supposed to do. And you're I think you're mocking the religion, because in that particular religion, those exercises have deep personal value and they mean something. And sort of going through the motions of these exercises, someone who isn't skilled, just kind of throwing that around in a classroom, I think could be offensive to a person who has deeply held religious beliefs.
Well, and that is an important point. And even in addition to that, teachers and instructors are not practitioners in these practices. They're not trained, they're not licensed. So practicing these types of, whether they're framing it as spirituality or some form of counseling or therapeutic practice, is not what they're trained in. And it really presents concerns within the aspect of framing it spiritually, which I absolutely learned so much about that in those early years specifically. But then also, in addition, these aspects of having staff practice these ideas upon students, and not including the parents. This is part of the problem too. We have opt-in versus opt-out. And I think it's really important parents understand why opt-out is such a concern. Opt-out programs, by and large, mean that the child is automatically put into those programs and practices, and parents are not notified per se. However, if you have an opt-in program, that means parents must sign a form allowing their child permission, granting that permission for the school district to place a child into said class or curricula or program. This is why so many parents are advocating for more opt-in programs as opposed to opt-out.
Yes. And so and needless to say that this is time being taken away from classroom instruction. And when we look at the reading scores, the reading proficiency scores, math proficiency scores, and the dismal results and the severe decline in America, kids K through 12, there's just so much decline. Taking any time away from classroom instruction and putting it towards new age kind of pseudoscience is ridiculous. So in every way, it's offensive. It could be offensive to people who have deeply held religious beliefs. You're not getting parental consent, so you're violating federal and often state law. You are taking precious classroom time away from teaching kids phonics or basic math, or giving them extra help where they need it. And instead you're engaging in all of this like feel good, let's meditate and do yogi garbage, in my opinion, like that, because it's useful if you're an adult and you love yoga, great, perfect. But teachers aren't yoga instructors. They aren't mental health professionals, and they're not religious guides, and we don't want them in classrooms. So it's all of this, just to me, is a waste of time, energy, and money. And
did you find that did this help kids in any way?
No, I didn't observe that, but that's how it was framed to me. When I met with school staff, I was told that this is a new program and it's called social emotional learning. I was told it was rooted in neuroscience. I was told that it's to educate the whole child. And then when I was specifically told that kids today are facing more difficulties than before, me as somebody who loves the study of history, who loves to read, who loves, any given day, I am picking up books at an antique store or a regular bookstore because I love reading. I love studying. And this to me was a line of a marketed pitch that was perhaps maybe even instructed to that staff member. But in that sentence, kids are facing more difficulties today than before. It made me realize this is something that I'm being marketed, and perhaps there's more to it. And there certainly is, because I remember it was the early part of last year. I was listening to a TED Talk where a proponent of social emotional learning, who works closely with the United Nations and had even met with some of the teachers union members in New York, here in the US. He is from another country, but he was talking about his program, Think Equal. And in talking about his program in this TED Talk, he shared that social emotional learning is basically constructed to create an entirely new generation. Then he went on to explain that in the study of neuroscience, that reaching kids during the ages of 3 to 7, when they're younger, is a stage he referred to as the optimal cognitive modifiability of a child.
That's interesting.
And
The optimal, say that again. I'm going to write this
yes,
down. Everyone, write it down.
So he referred to this, and you can find it. The video is on my Twitter at KELLYSKE.
Who is
I
you don't have to
not
we'll
pronounce his name, but I will send you the video. But the term is called the optimal cognitive modifiability of a child. And so he discussed this idea of weaving in the new value system. And this is a very important aspect of social and emotional learning, because SEL is not just weaving in the ideas of this spirituality sometimes, but it's also presenting a whole new system. And when I first encountered social emotional learning in our schools, it was framed as kindness, conflict resolution.
Yes.
Again, marketing.
And I will tell you, I've talked to former educators who are retired, and when they first started to use social emotional learning, those terms came up. Parents would have no idea what it's a very inside baseball thing for teachers. And it was about manners, kind of teaching kids to take their turn, to recognize, to look at, to basically, for little kids, look at someone's face and understand that maybe what they're saying and what they're feeling are two different things, very basic stuff like that. But then there was a switch, and a lot of them say that this switch happened about 2015, 2016. And they were expected to do more professional development, and it sounded a little weird to them. They were getting uncomfortable, and then they saw that they were supposed to weave the social emotional learning into their lesson plans, and after every lesson to somehow have some mental breaks and to discuss, some of this curriculum that had been shared with them, some of these programs. So does that track with you?
Well, and I think from continuing to analyze what I've observed the last almost 10 years is that makes complete sense in the manner in which I'm observing the curricula and program design from a marketed framed concept. What what I've read over the years, even with other subject matters that are weaving into education, for example, school-based health, what I've observed is that they typically are looking to introduce a new program with the least amount of resistance for the widespread, basically it's a marketing pitch, and they want the public to get that optimal buy-in. And in order to have buy-in and least resistance, it has to look acceptable, favorable. And that is why I think so many teachers and also community members, parents, they were marketed these ideas in a way to get that optimal buy-in, that positive reaction, that positive response. And how do I know some of this marketing? Well, interestingly enough, I've seen some of the ways in which the proponents of various education plans write about their plans, even admitting that they're working their way up in steps like stairs to slowly increase over time. But also, when we were at Scarlett, Moms for Liberty's National Summit in Philadelphia, I had arrived to the hotel early. And in doing so, I was sitting in the lobby at this long table, and a company was having an open air meeting in that lobby where everybody in the lobby could hear. And they were talking specifically about how they were going to market their product, which was an education technology product, to first the school districts, and then the teachers, and then the parents. And this is something that when I first started researching, it wasn't a layer that I was looking closely into, the fact that there's all these programs that do seek to profit from their products, that do seek to gather data on students for their businesses, and then all of these other layers. So understanding that just like any product out there, when, product placement, the design, every facet of marketing. So it is going into a lot of these ed programs because they need to profit. They want to profit. And I think that's key for people to understand, is that when you're hearing something new and shiny in education, kind of like when everybody bought into the model of the 3Qing reading method, which has now many educators have realized that was a mistake, and now they're returning to phonics. In these various formats, when something shiny comes along, it's important that we very closely analyze and inspect, don't necessarily take that bait.
So to recap, SEL is framed, it's lots of times kindness. You're going to hear that. It's sold to parents and mainly to school board members, who will make decisions about purchasing curriculum, or they'll form the committees that approve curriculum. Although lots of times this is now passed off to the superintendent, but so it's sold as kindness, emotional regulation, mental health support. We hear a lot about mental health. It's being funded billions and billions of dollars right now. The question is what frameworks, standards, vendors, surveys, and ideology are attached to it. So social emotional learning, that's a term I think parents are hearing more, but still a lot don't understand it. There's the whole child, there's school climate surveys, belonging, equity, restorative practices, health literacy, teaching character. But in the end, they are trying to shape a child's worldview. And as you said, they're looking for that optimal cognitive modification state, which is younger. I think a lot of times the early mental health, they started in middle school or high school, but now it's much, much younger because they're realizing that they need to get to kids younger. So talk a little bit about that. And then I want to hit on something I think a lot of parents are not aware of, that there are activist groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, like the Human Rights Campaign, like many other far left advocates for youth, Planned Parenthood. These are all NGOs and organizations with a deeply ideological agenda and who raise hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And a lot of times with grant money too, but they create curriculum, mental health curriculum that is used in professional development, that is recommended by state superintendents and state departments of education, is recommended to school districts. So it's a whole labyrinth. So while you may not see sheets in the classroom from Southern Poverty Law Center, there is guidance, there is training, and it's nudging. They're nudging. And like you said, it's a long process, and it's a way of getting people to be on board with something that they wouldn't have if they knew everything right up front. So I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, and the way social emotional learning is designed to operate is to like back in almost 10 years ago when I first encountered this at the school district. It starts in one facet of the school day, then it's designed to weave into a particular curricula or format or program, like our school district was planning to bring in Mind Up curricula. Then it may operate in clubs, in special events. It could be underneath social emotional learning's kindness or inclusive ideas. DEI could be incorporated. Of course, it is in many ways. And it could be a special assembly. It could be a special event at school. And then it can also be the lens by which school staff are being taught to teach every class through what's called a pedagogy, which means the art of teaching. Pedagogy is a word that is believed to have been coined by a man named Johann Herbert, but a long, long time ago, the art of teaching, this lens by which every class begins and is taught and ends. And then data collection is another facet of this. And then in addition, I'm already seeing social emotional learning is designed to move out into sports, into recess, into all extracurricular and after school activities, and then even out into the community and in the workplace eventually, because the goal is to create a social emotional climate.
So what data collection, those are the school climate surveys. What function do they serve? Real function, because this, you'll hear one thing, but what do they really do, and why should parents opt out of these surveys?
Well, and this is something that a lot of people are talking about today, is the way that schools used to assess students based on their ability to read, write, comprehend, the reading comprehension, their mathematical abilities, and etc. These were the competencies. That word is key. We had academic competencies. Today, the competencies have shifted towards what's called soft skills or character traits, where students are being subjectively assessed, even potentially graded on subjective character assessments that align with social emotional learning. So a student might be analyzed based on their grit or a myriad of these other competencies that have been designed. And it's problematic because not only is it subjective, but it's intrusive. It's in my opinion, many of these programs are further, I guess, an example of mission creep, where these other agendas are being woven into the school, and not just the school, but into the family life itself. Whereas the familial value system is what shapes a child, their experiences, their culture, their, perhaps if they have a faith, their religion, and a myriad of other family value systems that exist. What social emotional learning and these other programs are doing is not just stating that this is our value system entering into the child's life and intending to enter into the family life, but it's also saying we are assessing you, and this is our school climate. This is how everything that we do at this school district is to operate. And when a school district starts to intrude in somebody's personal values and beliefs, it gets concerning because, for example, I filed a public records request in 2021 with my attorney to obtain some content on social emotional learning at an elementary school in California. And in the content I received, it was talking about shifting away from basically more towards the mindset of a collective, more towards the mindset of activism and social justice, and in even liberation. So what we're encountering is a fully intentional plan to reshape the focus, the values, the beliefs even of a young child, so that they go in the direction that those creating these programs want them to go, instead of more of their familial values, their independent beliefs, and more towards this whole. And it's interesting that they call it whole child, because that idea of the whole school or the whole community or the whole child, it's designed to operate in this collectivist mental state or value system. And I see it as a form of conformity. And this is not the school's job. The school's job is reading, writing, arithmetic. And so what we have with whole child education is the open admission by its promoters, those that want whole child education, will openly admit that they believe we are separating away from a sole focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, and embracing every other facet of the child's life. Their argument, or what I would say their marketing pitch, is that students can't adequately learn until every other need has been met. Well, that's a great marketing pitch if you're a socialist.
Yes, that's great marketing pitch. None of it's true, because they're taking that time frame that they have where it's optimal to basically brainwash kids is also the optimal time where kids can learn important concepts that they carry throughout their entire life, especially those early years. So they're, as we all know, kids can learn a second language very easily when they're young, and it's much harder as you get older because their brain is just ripe. It's ready to learn. And so that's why that's a time where you drill, you get in phonetic learning, phonetic concepts, you start drilling math concepts, because this is a time period where we've got to lay that foundation for these kids that they can build on throughout their academic career. If you're wasting that time with a bunch of brainwashing so they can all be little Paulo Freire's, then that ship sails. And it doesn't mean that a child can't learn later, that adults can't learn later, but it's a lot more difficult, time consuming, and expensive, and requires more expertise by the teacher, the person trying to help a child who has now those golden years, that golden opportunity has passed them by. So what they're doing to children is more than just, oh, that's too bad. They are potentially causing permanent damage in children in so many different ways. And it has to stop, and there has to be some accountability. But we have got to stop allowing our classrooms and departments of education to be hijacked by Marxist activists that see our children as little foot soldiers in their army, their revolutionary army, to overtake capitalism for whatever cause, for whatever reason, whether they have a transgender agenda, or they are part of the anti-racist movement, or whatever it is. They've all come together to form this, sort of a stew of activism. And it's causing a lot of damage. So I want to talk about learning for justice. Learning for justice, and because SPLC has 2 curriculums, they changed their name, but this is to be an example because there's going to be a hearing on Wednesday about the Southern Poverty Law Center, which the Department of Justice just a few weeks ago there was a press conference with the FBI, and there were 11 counts of fraud. A grand jury came back and said that the Southern Poverty Law Center was guilty of fraud. And I won't go into that too much here, but if you follow us, then you're aware of all the damage that SPLC has done, that they labeled groups like ours and many other conservative organizations and nonprofits. They labeled us as white supremacist, anti-government, domestic terrorist organizations. They stuck that label on us in order to kind of cut us off at the knees and prevent our success in waking up communities and parents about this agenda, what was happening. Made it easier to say, oh, look, don't listen to them. They're just a bunch of white supremacists. And even though what we say is a lot of common sense, that could, for normies, people tune out when they hear that stuff. So how is it that the Southern Poverty Law Center is able to infiltrate school districts under the guise of social emotional learning?
Well, and it's interesting. Their original name is Teaching Tolerance. And I find that very interesting, considering the allegations of what has been stated, funneling money even to, to actual white supremacist groups, including the KKK. These are huge issues, huge allegations that this was, that they're going to be in this hearing for.
Yeah.
But
so SPLC, Teaching Tolerance, or Learning for Justice.
Learning for Justice.
For
right.
kindergarten on up, this is an organization that paid millions of dollars to the KKK, Aryan Nation, and the name, a Nazi party. Like, they gave money to these organizations. They basically, what is suggested is that when they couldn't find the kind of racism and hate that they need to keep the coffers and the fundraising going so they can ship it off to some offshore account, when that money train, that gravy train was running dry, they needed to fund this kind of hatred so that they could come in and save people from it. That's the fraud. That's fraud. You're defrauding your donors, and you're labeling groups that are not white supremacists. That they are not all of the things, but you're intentionally doing that for political gain.
Right. And I'm always looking at this again through the lens of their marketing. How did they get this big? How did they produce this much influence in our school system? If you look in your school districts, I know county offices of education and individual school districts are using the SPLC's Learning for Justice curricula as supplemental content. This is being found in a variety of curricula, whether it's in social emotional learning or social studies as a resource. What's really important for any parent or grandparent listening is that if you go to your school district and you ask to see curricula, they have a set of approved curricula. However, supplemental curricula could be a printout from a random website or something that the teacher, even though the teacher is in a technicality supposed to get the approval or the communication between themselves and a curriculum specialist of the district, that doesn't always take place. I know this because I have many wonderful teacher friends, and I have been made aware of so much that happens in schools over the last 10 years of doing this, almost 10 years. But in supplemental curricula, you can find content, you can print it out online, and you can immediately introduce this to your class. if you have a teacher that is more geared towards this social justice activism, this idea, which is very, you mentioned Paulo Freire earlier, who was a Brazilian Marxist whose content and beliefs are widely incorporated into education, colleges, into teacher credentialing programs, into curricula in a variety of states, and very influential, was a Marxist. So what we're dealing with is ideas like that have obviously been marketed to many. All you have to do if you're a big organization is really get the buy-in from the teachers unions, and then the teachers unions facilitate that influence oftentimes out to all of their state and local unions and start promoting it. I've seen under my research of comprehensive sexuality education, teachers will have book parties where they're promoting not just curricular content, but they're giving away the books that many people have. Yeah. And they sometimes wrap them in shiny bows. You know, if you're a group of teachers, your local union is doing this teacher party, and then they wrap them up in bows and give them out to the teachers for free.
So, to interject real fast, there are teachers that have told me that, you know, the week before school starts, all the teachers come in, they get their classrooms ready. There would be book fairs of free books, and teachers could come down to the cafeteria. They'd set up this book fair and they could take books. And one person told me, actually, in this particular school, there were 3 teachers that said every single book was DEI. The undertones were DEI. Most of them were part of a pride collection, and those that weren't part of the LGBTQIAS2 plus movement were very Ibram X. Kendi books written by Marxists and activists. Every single one. There was not a single classic book or book that did not have some sort of activist or political undertone. And one teacher was so dismayed that she publicly complained and said, I'll just bring in my own books. And she had to, because of that, she was put on notice and had to go through training, what we'd call a struggle session. And after that, she quit. She retired. She was like, I'm done. I'm out. And I wish this was just a one-off story, but it is a common story. This is how they get rid of the old guard, the teachers that they may not be conservative, but they know how to teach and they know what's nonsense, and they see this as a lot of nonsense, and then they want them out. So they really put the pressure on them to quit, because they know it's too hard to fire them. So they make life unbearable for them until they quit.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting in our conversation, it reminds me of this video I shared a while back on Twitter. And I had been watching a YouTube video from the teachers union in California. And in the video, a young teacher shared how everything, what did he say? Teaching is political in all aspects and realms. Then he stated, everything I do is political. Even the curricula I choose to center is political. And this is the mindset of some in education, which is why good teachers need our support and encouragement, because there are many teachers, which, many of them may fall on different sides of the political spectrum, but they actually care to teach. They care to see their students, young and teens, advancing in reading, advancing in their ability to comprehend reading and write. And they actually still do care about mathematics and the importance of all of the subject matter. Teachers are observing this change in the classroom. Many of them are seeing the problematic results of failed policy, as in restorative justice practices, and some of these ideas that are based upon intersectional identities. And in observing this, they are still trying to go to school, even as we talked earlier about data and the subjective character assessments in social emotional learning. I know teachers that are having such limited preparation and implementation time of just class instruction because there are so many various data programs that they're having to enter all this information into the computer that is subjective based character assessments for their school districts when they could be doing other things that actually truly benefit kids. You know, we were talking earlier too about what really benefits students. What I found interesting is that some of the very people that are proponents of social emotional learning and other programs are the very ones researching and stating these evidence-based studies indicate. It is if you are conducting a study, a real study, you have to have no bias. But what is widely happening in the field of research and conducting studies is that the very people themselves that are proponents of whatever the program is, they're doing the study. So if you go to a university and you are taking coursework to learn how to actually conduct studies, it's immediately disqualifying if the person doing the study or all of the people doing the study have a desired outcome. If their entire goal is to push social emotional learning, and then they're doing the study and finding, oh my goodness, it works. Well, that just doesn't work that way. That is a complete just degradation of research itself. And so it's really important that the public knows these other details, because what is happening to the field of education is just sad. One of the things I do is I collect sometimes newer textbooks and older textbooks alike. It's very interesting to see what people have studied over the years. And here we're talking about books and all of this. A lot of these fields, whether it's the Southern Poverty Law Center or fill in the blank other programs, they have widely been promoted by the teachers' unions. And what we have is a growth of the teachers' unions in this country who have really been about pushing their political agenda in the classroom amongst and really changing America from within. There's a woman who used to be the president of the National Education Association, and you could go on YouTube. In the past, she spoke at a California Teachers Association event, and she said, "We are fighting for an America that never existed."
Wow.
And in that speech, it really helps us understand this is what the teachers' unions are doing. They're really not about taking children to a place of excelling academically so they can be launched into their future with the most successful understanding, the ability to, we're talking about critical thinking the way it used to be, where you can actually look at something and form your own educational, logical thought. Their political agenda is utmost of their goals.
Yes.
And the sad thing is that the children, in my opinion, are being used as puppets, as nothing but puppets to their political agenda, to then be carrying out their agenda. I've seen countless videos of teachers who push an agenda on their youngest students, and then they have these little kids in elementary school create their little 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to go out and protest. And then they have the little kids marching out on their playground as a political protest. And we are treating adults like children and children like adults.
We've covered that in depth, especially with May Day, but even before that, a report on my social media, Moms for Liberty social media, I've infiltrated groups, attended professional development training seminars that they put on, and with the Minnesota Ice Out movement, kind of tracked. And right now you see on the screen, Defending Education has a report that I suggest everyone read. It's a very comprehensive report about advancing LGBTQ and justice and transgender advocacy by teachers unions like the National Education Association. And if you haven't heard of this and you're a parent or grandparent, or you're just very interested, please read it, because you'll be shocked to learn that teachers unions do not care about teachers. They don't care about students. They don't care about education. They care about advancing a political agenda, just like what you said. They are completely focused on it. And I was in DC on May 1st, where I, with my own 2 ears, and I recorded this, attended one of the May Day rallies where Becky Pringle was in attendance, and she gave a sermon. She gave a sermon. It was a cross between a political speech and a sermon, in which she said they are going to accomplish all the things. And none of those things were teaching kids to read, teaching kids to do math, and helping teachers to earn more and be better prepared for the classroom. No, none of those things. All of the things for her is political power. We're going to get control of the Supreme Court. We're going to get control of Congress. We're going to get control of the executive. All the things are all political things. And they did a Marxist fist bump over everything, including prayer. It was a very ideological and quasi-religious rally that ended with a battle cry to take out President Trump. This is what teachers unions are. They are not about teachers. They are not about kids. They are about political power. And they will do anything to advance that power, including bring in outside organizations that also don't care about kids. And I want to, while we have some time, I want to talk about this graph. And this is something that we exposed just last week, late last week. This sheet of paper was found crumpled up in a 7th grade child's backpack in a small town of Crandon, Wisconsin, 1,700 residents, a small rural conservative area that has a Republican assembly member and a Republican state senator. This is an area that Trump won decidedly. And yet, this school district applied for federal funds under the guise of mental health. They were awarded funds in 2023. It's a 5-year grant, Project Aware, and it should be tagged for mental health. This is a mental health grant. They used the funds to bring in an outside organization where the presenter uses they, them pronouns in the bio and says she uses an intersectionality approach. If I showed you all the things, it'd be evident to you, Kelly, right off the bat, that this group that they hired is seeped deeply in ideological activism. They brought this person in. This person handed out this worksheet. This worksheet has to do with consent, and there's explicit sexual questions asked, including what turns you on. Do you want to be licked, bitten, or tickled in certain areas? ... Where? A lot of very egregious material in this. And so I contacted you right away, and you made me aware of some things that I did not know. So I want you to talk about this and then put that in the greater context of social emotional learning. And at the end, I want us to really talk about these grants and this funding, because as I told you in a call before we got on, we're not going to be able to change the minds of Becky Pringle, the NEA, Democrats that are in Congress, and probably Democrats that are in our state legislators. But we certainly can influence conservatives and Republicans. And unfortunately, many of them vote to fund mental health because they think kindness, belonging I want to help. This is good, but this is actually what they're funding. So Kelly, I'm going to let you now take the stage.
Yeah, well, and when you sent this to me, it was additional confirmation. When I started researching comprehensive sexuality education in December 2018, and then when I got very involved with grassroots efforts here in California to address the new California Healthy Youth Act that was being installed, that then caused our health framework to change, it was made very clear and understood that, again, everything that we hear, mental health, social emotional learning, kindness, conflict resolution, multi-tiered systems of support, ethnic studies, every single thing that we observe in schools needs to be asked, what does that definition, what does that word whole child, what does that word consent, how is it applied, how is it taught, through what lens of the educator or of the organizations? And consent is something I had spoken about in a breakout session I taught at the 2023 Moms for Liberty National Summit.
It was jaw dropping, and you also talked about sexual pleasure. And I saw it all over this worksheet. They were talking about pleasure and consent. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of what you talked about 3 years ago. And now I'm seeing.
Because what most people don't realize, consent has been framed, especially after the Me Too movement, it was framed as a necessary teaching in order to prevent sexual assault. That on the surface sounds really good. But in actuality, the way consent is being taught by adults to minor children is as a sexual script, is exactly what you see in these ways of practicing consent. And it's also been a shift. It's been a shift from, I want you to think about this. When you're a child, I was one of these kids growing up. I was always helping the teacher. I was a teacher's aide. I was considered a high academically achieving student. I was being considered, and the school talked with my parents about bumping me up a grade because I wasn't feeling challenged enough. I was part of the GATE program, et cetera, et cetera. And when I was young, I was one of those kids. I wanted to strive for excellence. I wanted to be obedient. I wanted to do what I was told. I was taught from a young child the importance of obedience and things like that. Children like me need to have, and I did have, thankfully, because I had great parenting, children like me need to still be taught how to say no, and when and how to raise your voice and all of those things. Because when you have repeatedly been taught to be obedient in class, to your coaches, to your PE teachers, to walk in a straight line, all of those things, to go do your chores when it's time to go do your chores, to go get your homework assignments done, so that, you know, back when we were kids, it was get your homework done during the week so you could go outside and ride bikes with your friends, or, you know, run inside for TGIF, which was popular back then.
Yeah.
But what we're dealing with now is a reduced, almost non-existence of emphasis and teaching on how to say no, and an overemphasis on how to say yes. But it's not just how to say yes, it's enthusiastic consent. It is sexual scripts. So sometimes what they do is they will—
That's exactly it. That's exactly what it was.
They will have kids sometimes come to the front of the class, and they will give them a sexual script, and they will ask the kids to read the sexual script. Sometimes, you know, and we're talking about in an audience of your peers. We're talking about a variety of ages this might occur with. We're talking about sometimes in front of a guest speaker, which is basically a stranger that the teacher and the school district just introduced the class to. And now they're supposed to read this, sexual script and kind of act it out, or sit in circles and find a partner and act out these sexual scripts. So we're talking about from a perspective of early childhood development and understanding brain development and how this operates. Sometimes comprehensive sexuality education also encourages the instructors to explicitly ask for students to state more of the slang sexual terms. There is a book that is widely recommended by a woman named Heather Karina, and that book also encourages the use of these slang terms and gets into more explicit topics. And all to say, how consent is being taught by adults to kids through now, as you've observed, mental health, and through this is a manner in which reduces a child's natural healthy boundaries. It is an explicit, as you wrote there, it is an explicit sexual script where students are now being taught to normalize asking for sexual favors and agreeing to it. It's a completely separate thing. So if you're somebody like I was, where you lean towards, just going along with something in the sense of, wanting to do what you're told by, the various adults in your life, the teachers, the coaches, the instructors, it takes actually training to raise your voice and say, no. This is why there's such an emphasis for young people to take self-defense courses. Why do we take self-defense? It's not because we don't, it's not because we just know it. It's because we need to be trained in it. We need to be trained in self-defense. It's not wrong to take a self-defense class. It can be a very good thing to do so. And it's not to say that you're going to need to use it. It's so that if you get into that situation, you do know how to defend yourself. You do know how to stand up for yourself. It's not a bad thing. And in the same way, what are they doing here? They're getting kids used to, as you wrote there, how does that feel?
Yes.
What would you like more or less of next time? There is nothing in this worksheet that is explicitly training kids how to say no. And this is, again, in a variety of
the pizza. Do you think that that's a way to normalize, like, kids like pizza? Let's take a pizza analogy. And because on one side it'll say, like, what kind of toppings do you like on your pizza? Well, what kind of positions do you like in sex? It's, to me, really scary level of brainwashing and confusing kids using something that they like, that they're, and then conflating it with sex and consent.
Well, and that's a big part of comprehensive sexuality education too, is normalizing everything and equating it as something totally normal. I'll never forget, and I think this was maybe a couple years ago, I was reading a document by the International Planned Parenthood group, and they had stated in the document they wanted children ages 10 and younger to learn that kind of normalize sex work, as they framed it. And these kinds of ideas, again, are normalizing ideas to young children or minor teens that normalize and move in a certain frame. And it is, again, always in how something is taught. So at that time, after the 2023 conference, someone attempted a gotcha piece on me because of the fact that I was addressing the disturbing ways consent is taught. Many people, even on our side, don't realize that the way in which consent is taught is really concerning. And if you're a seventh grader and you have to, suddenly you're with some classmate, or you're even potentially standing in front of the class and you're having to act out some sexual script, that is, adults don't even want to do that. Imagine adults having to do that in the workplace. No.
A group of kids, co-ed, and parents were not made aware that this was happening. Parents were not given the opportunity to opt out. Why? Because it was under the guise of social emotional learning and mental health, an outside group brought in. So a parent couldn't know to ask, hey, what they didn't know it was happening. They couldn't ask, what materials are you going to give to my children? And this was all under the guise of mental health instead of human growth and development. Do you think it was an accident that they kind of structured this as mental health and not human growth and development, considering the fact that every state has statutory guidelines, and sometimes very comprehensive? In Wisconsin, we have 2 pages of guidelines, statutory law that schools have to follow when they're implementing human growth and development, because parents are so concerned about this topic and the way that it's introduced in schools. And they have fought very hard to be able to opt out of conversations, opt their children out when they violate their deeply held religious beliefs. So do you think it's an accident that the school district, like many, put this type of this training for children under the guise of a mental health breakout versus human growth and development?
I think it's very, in my opinion, I think it's very intentional. Actually, in my historical research of some of what we're dealing with today in education, one of the topics being both the WISC model, whole school, whole community, whole child model, and the growth of the community schools movement. This woman who was considered the mother of the community schools movement, Joy Dreyfus, in 1998, she said in an interview, the interviewer was asking her if mental health was going to be the big one. And she said, oh yeah. And what's significant about mental health, looking at it, and even that woman worked for the Guttmacher Institute, Joy did, which is the public policy. I mean, when she worked there, they were the public policy and research arm for Planned Parenthood Federation of America. They had plenty of goals, especially back in the 1980s. They wanted a clinic on every school in America. That was the goal of the then Planned Parenthood president, Faye Waddleton, stated in an old news article that I have that's archived. And in these ideas of weaving, kind of like we talked about with social emotional learning or holistic education, whole child, whole community, whole school, they want these ideas woven into everything. So in the same way that man shared about the early cognitive modifiability of a child and how they're using social emotional learning and education to basically build an entirely new generation of people. What is happening to science? What's happening to math? What's happening to English, social studies, every single topic, and mental health is all to weave in these various agendas. And what most people don't realize, again, when we hear mental health, especially when I hear something that's marketed everywhere all of a sudden, and they have these awareness weeks for it or an awareness month, it's, again, pay attention. This is marketing. It's mass marketing. And it's not even just in the United States.
Yeah, look
It
at
is
this image right
outside.
here. That looks nice. Doesn't that look nice?
That does. And I'm always thinking, okay, this is again marketing. Somebody sat in a board meeting.
Safe,
and
engaged, supported. It looks community. Oh, yeah, that's great. Yay. Let's fund this. Except for when you fund this, you get this. This is what you get. Your
Mhm.
7th grader gets to be sexualized. So this is the real message that trying to say, like, there are real world consequences. You'll have SPLC curriculum where your child will go through struggle sessions about anti-bias training in kindergarten. And then your 7th grader will learn about sex positions and sexual pleasure without you even knowing it. And it's going to be because of this here. I'll add this to stage again. But the whole school model. So continue.
Well, yeah, and the whole school, whole community, whole child model, half of it was accredited towards an organization not just the United States Center for Disease Control, but also an organization that goes by its acronym ASCD, the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development. I always love to go way into the history and the understanding and the organizations and the individuals to really understand and wrap my mind around this. What's important about WISC and ASCD started in the teachers union. The largest teachers union in the country today is the National Education Association. And it was in the NEA that ASCD began. They splintered off into became their own entity back approximately in the 1940s. This is what we're watching the ramifications of. The community school model that I mentioned is designed to take a school and work again gradually towards this idea of making the school a hub of wraparound government social services, a big government model in every community. Is it supported by communists? Yes. Community schools is actually something I've posted about on Twitter. It's advocated on a website by the Communist Party, CPUSA.
Wow.
Democratic Socialists have put out demands for community schools. And how does the WISC model and community schools work in concert together? They're both working us in the direction of providing these wraparound services. Some of the key people who worked upon the development of the WISC model and its origins of coordinated school health, we're working with the proponents of community schools on other ideas and similar goals. They're all trying to get us working towards this idea of government services and particularly school-based health and mental health on campuses. But again, through what lens? It's health equity, and the social determinants of health. All right, let's look at this.
Yeah, look at nurture, guide, empower. So this is what you're talking about, the ASCD, cultivate belonging. So all the feels are there.
Well, and this is also interesting. So when I was referring to earlier this organization that was having this open air meeting in the lobby right before that Philadelphia National Summit, they had just been at that conference for ISTE. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education. ISTE joined forces with ASCD. So ASCD, you have this now, which is a global organization touting many different members from a variety of countries. And then you have ISTE, this International Society for Technology and Education. So they joined forces years ago and are working together to promote their ideas in education and education technology. So it's really important for especially parents to understand any ed tech program, everything that your child or teenager does on education technology in schools is able to be seen. Teachers can see what students may perceive as private chat amongst themselves. Teachers and school staff can see what students are Google searching. They are able to see a significant amount of what this young person does. Can you imagine? I mean, I think back on the days because I remember life before the internet. And I remember back when kids actually, wrote neatly folded in fun ways and passed notes in class. Students go to school and they get Chromebooks and other, devices that they're able to access in schools. And it is keeping a tremendous amount of data on kids, and so much that students have no idea the degree to which their privacy is gone the moment they open that laptop and start typing on that school laptop, because their data is being collected and all kinds of things are being observed. I remember from the big story that Abigail Schreier reported in 2021 about this leaked audio from a California Teachers Association conference where two teachers were training other teachers at a LGBTQ conference. And in that conference, some of that leaked audio Abigail shared on a television show. But these teachers said that they totally stalked their students, that if a student was Googling Transgender Day of Visibility, they were like, check, we're going to invite that kid to their GSA club when they get back to campus. Or if they, they were observing these kids and what they were doing on their Google Chromebooks or their school issued devices in order to personally invite them to the student-led club that was the GSA. So it's really important for parents out there to understand, and even for kids. Imagine being a kid and you're Googling something, or you think you have a private chat, and every single thing is being watched. The degree of which the privacy is removed and the data is gathered it's beyond me. And so the reason I brought up the notes in class, if you were a kid and you were passing a note to a friend in class and then the teacher grabbed it and read it, that moment of horror, like, oh my gosh, the teacher's going to read my note.
Yes.
Well, the teachers are able to read and see a whole lot more than passing a note.
Yep. They're going to see a lot. And I have heard that kids get flagged just because of emails that are sent, texts. As far as my own kids, my daughter will not use, because she's aware she won't use these schools. She has her own computer, and she's like, I like they're watching. I didn't even have to tell her that. She's like, I don't like using it. I think that it's intrusive, and I know for a fact that they're watching because the kids talk, and that there are kids that suddenly get flagged for counseling, or they are asked to go into an office because of things that were emails and stuff. So, I mean, and you'd think, well, that they might say, well, we're monitoring. We want to make sure that we catch, like, let's say there's a kid that's very depressed or anxiety, and we want to help them. But there's other things. They're tracking data. This is very important data for the purposes of marketing. People want to buy this kind of data. That's why, that's all the with Instagram, with Facebook, with Meta, the lawsuits, they gear content towards kids so that kids, they can influence them to buy products, to watch shows, to, it all comes down to money and marketing. It's not just ideology. It's money. And data mining that's very valuable knowledge for people that are trying to design things so they can sell things.
Right. Well, in addition to that too, that is a very important point. And then in addition to that, what is also happening is data is then gathered and used to push other agendas. So for example, the Healthy Kids Survey, where they're asking questions about a whole myriad of sexual topics and a variety of, a whole range of ideas.
Do you
they
use
then
different pronouns?
Yeah.
And they leading questions. It can start off with, do you eat broccoli? How often, how many hours of sleep do you get? And it seems pretty innocent. And then suddenly it goes, do you know how your parents vote? Is there a gun in the house? Asking like what religion or what faith, different like intrusive family questions. And then they ask about their sexuality, how, are they taking pills, drug use, all of these things. And what are they doing with that data? How is that used? I think it's used a lot in order to justify bringing in more and doubling down on DEI and more social emotional learning. And, they never do these things and think, oh, we're doing a great job. We don't need to hire more diversity counselors or more counselors. They think, we need more.
Yeah. Well, and what you said is a really good point. One thing is under CDC's DASH program, they might often say that, this many students surveyed said this, thereby then they create the need then because of this, we need fill in the blank program that maybe they were already planning in advance before. And the other thing that's really important for people to understand is that, kids can say no. And encourage kids to say no. I would encourage parents too, as much as is possible, to assert your role as parent in your child's life. Opt out, send that opt out every first start of the school year to the superintendent, the principal, and every school teacher that your child might interact with. And then ask the school district. This part's really important. Ask the school district where your child will be when they're opted out, who will be their adult supervision, how will the school notify a substitute teacher or new staff member immediately. Like, let's say a teacher has to call in sick for work, or they had car trouble, and there's immediately a substitute. What is the school's process in place to ensure that the substitute immediately has that communication of what your child is opted out of and the plan in place? Because things do happen with opt-outs, and it's important to have the school communicate that to you, the parent.
I'm glad we're talking about this, because I want to, let's take the last segment and let's talk about the call to action. So we've demonstrated lots of issues. What can parents do right now in order to, I know it's the end of the school year, but this is prime time for climate surveys. So that's one thing. But what can parents do now, and what should they do now? They're about to have the whole summer. What should they do for the next school year? How can they be the best advocates for their children? And how should they start to put on their little sleuth hat and start digging over the summer? Like, find out what's happening in your school.
Yeah, I think learning the information for yourself and being able to communicate that to others is a key step of, I would say, number one. Two, diplomatically engaging with good teachers, staff members, or school board members is also very important. And then at the state and federal level, one of the things that you shared that was important about Project Aware is the federal funding. We always need to follow the money. And in doing so, it's important to really engage at the federal and state level with legislators and communicate to them about these various programs that are being federally funded. Because I think when people hear mental health in schools, or they hear a lot of, even the school-based health clinic model is being marketed under dental and eye care. It has for years. Sometimes recently there was a federal hearing where it was school-based health centers were promoted favorably as a mechanism to treating kids for type 1 diabetes. So that is how they're promoting it. That's the little bit of bait. They're not telling people mental health programs in schools, by and large, offer promotion of gender ideology. They're not saying that sexual and reproductive health and the promotion of comprehensive sexuality education is also taking place at school-based clinics. This is not what's being shared. So getting that information out there is key. Helping people understand that social emotional learning, it's looking beyond the marketing, and it's no different. I often tell people, if you're up late at night and the infomercials come on with the fake people clapping in the audience, typically we can see right through that.
Yep.
Quality marketing is kind of like what we see during the Super Bowl. And it's easy to want to buy a product when you see this fantastic marketed plan. And looking beyond the marketing of something is key. So learn about something, engage diplomatically, make friends with those who you can share some information with. Always exercise discernment and wisdom, because some people may be with you and some people may have other intentions. So that's just always something helpful to be aware of. And 3, advocate for better, advocate for changes, advocate for addressing the way these funds are being utilized, or at the state and federal level for changes. And I think that's key. And always understand that parents have a right to direct the upbringing of their children. One
Yes.
thing that I think parents and also many teachers don't know, even to this day, that they can leave the union. They don't know that alternatives exist out there. So letting your teachers know, you don't have to be in the union. You can leave. There's other options out there that are likely going to be far better for you anyways, and support beliefs that you support. So I think that is
And one
also
organization is the Teacher Freedom Alliance, and you will be at their conference in July. I think I will be there too. I'm working on that right now. So what impresses you briefly about the Teacher Freedom Alliance?
I'm impressed by the fact that they are building up and encouraging so many teachers across the country. They are offering a variety of alternatives. They're offering alternative trainings. They're providing all kinds of support. And I think that's key, because it's not a matter of, parents against teachers. Actually, we're finding more, and I'm seeing and have experienced this personally. I am partnering with good teachers to encourage them. And many teachers have taken a stand. We watched this in California. For anybody, what happened with this Spreckles lawsuit by Center for American Liberty was that leaked teacher audio turned into a mom discovering that the same teachers from that leaked audio were engaging with her daughter, and she filed a lawsuit with Center for American Liberty. And that lawsuit was important because their own lawsuit in discovery made it known to the nation and international news that there were these parental secrecy policies. Then later you see the bravery of board president Sonia Shaw, who's now running as state superintendent of schools here in California, and her bravery to notify parents and to create this policy in Chino Valley made huge news, even garnering our current state superintendent of schools to try and go to her school board meeting and talk out of time even, and need to, politely be escorted out. And then after that, you had these teachers that stood up legally with another law firm in the Mirabelli case that was successful and went to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And what we are seeing, and what I encourage good teachers and good parents alike, is that if there's something you're not sure about, there are multiple wonderful pro bono law firms that are working to advance liberty, that are working to aid good teachers, that are working to help and affirm parental rights in this country. And if you're out there and maybe you don't have a specific case, but you'd like to be involved in some way, find some of these good organizations and support them. Support good organizations that are helping uplift moms and dads and grandparents and good teachers, and addressing matters as need be through the law. If you need help with an opt-out, there's multiple good law firms that I'm sure would be more than happy to assist. And assert your role as parents and engage diplomatically. Many teachers and educators that I've met, perhaps they have taken the marketing of something, whether it's the intersectional identities and the woke ideology, or maybe it's the comprehensive sexuality education, the framing, the marketing that these proponents provide. I will say they are strong in their marketing. It is good marketing, but it's a lie. And many people have come out and they've become curious first. I remember I was curious about some things years back, and it really made me, who I was 10 years ago was very different than who I am now, because sometimes when you research, study, when you get curious and you start reading further, you realize that the ideas you once held strongly may not have been accurate. And I think that's important. Always look at those who are promoting these ideas and understand there might be an opportunity to learn, to share, so on and so forth. So build relationships, be diplomatic, be respectful, and then build awareness in your communities and advocate for change at the state and federal level.
And you just recorded something with PragerU. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I had a great conversation. They are an amazing organization that I encourage supporting as well. They put out some great kids material. They
Easy
are
to understand little what is SEL in 5 minutes, super, just really bite size. And then they have long form. So they have short form, long form, podcasts, resources, and then they provide alternative materials. So you're not just against things, but you're for something. They have alternative materials that a public school district can use. They are not religious. They are not conservative. They are just common sense and decent, and they would align with state standards. So that's one thing, but continue.
Yeah, I am overwhelmingly impressed by their organization. I remember first hearing about them and seeing their 5-minute videos that are so well done and very helpful and informative. It's a great way to brush up on a topic in a brief amount of time. But I remember seeing them at the teacher event last year, and their resources and what they had on their table and the books are just fantastic. They're great addition to, if your school doesn't have it, you as a parent can access these materials at home. It's great supplement, great conversation. You know, one of the things I always think about growing up myself, I was raised in public school, is that the time spent with family, growing strong families, is oftentimes those dinner table conversations or sitting around the table and talking about sharing some strengths or some struggles, or sitting around and really talking about a value or learning something new as a family, or going out and going for a walk, or all kinds of things. But build up your family, make those memories together, always make sure that stays front and center. But this organization, I'm just so thankful for them. I'll share in the future definitely more, and I'm excited for what they're doing.
To be announced, so that'll be coming out. But in the meantime, you have your own podcast, and so why don't you talk about that? And they can follow you. People can follow you on social media, and you are you travel all throughout the state of California, and sometimes even across the country. You will be at the Teacher Freedom Alliance conference. You'll be presenting there. But let's talk about your podcast and how people can learn more about you.
Certainly. The podcast is going to be reinvigorated soon. I've been busy doing some research and am considering some other projects, which might be pretty exciting here in the near future. But I will have some new episodes. It's called A Time to Stand. Part of the reason I picked this is because it is not easy sometimes for many people to step up and stand up, or even go to a school board meeting. Public speaking is a huge fear for people. Yes. And I think it takes a lot of courage to speak up and stand up. And it's at the same time, what a wonderful thing it is when you think back at our American history and know that this country was developed by brave men and women through joys and sorrows, through triumph and tragedy, who fought and suffered and worked hard to get us here. You know, and I often think of that quote by Benjamin Franklin, "A republic if you can keep it." And I often think of keeping, because I like gardening and I love birding. And I think of tending to a garden or keeping a republic. It does take our effort to tend to keep something. That idea, that analogy, if you can keep it, means not just holding on or keeping something. It actually means that the daily involvement, the action, the things that it take, if I go out to my garden and I don't tend to it, the plants will suffer, and the weeds will grow and build. And what an important role we have as the people of this country to get out there and vote, to get out there and be involved beyond voting, to find ways to encourage and care for others in our communities, to build up others, and to get involved. So more than not, it is a time to stand. It's a time to get involved. It's a time to protect children who are being so disregarded in society, who are being targeted for political purposes instead of their own benefit, of their own academics. So we have this wonderful opportunity to be courageous and to encourage that courage amongst others. So it is a time to stand. And I think that, the podcast, what I have sought to do in the past particularly is to interview amazing people who are also on the front lines, exposing a myriad of topics. And then also I'm going to be sharing from my own research as well. I'm going to show an image of a book that I just currently ordered. I mentioned briefly the health equity agenda and social determinants of health. So this is one of the books I've bought. And it is a justice-oriented book on this social determinants of health. And it says it is for health justice.
Yep.
So I'm always learning, always reading, and there are some great accounts to follow. If anybody is looking for help, they can reach me. I'm pretty involved on Twitter, X,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes. Yes.
And my social media account is Kelly SKE. I'm always looking to help people. And I think that we have it in us to do our very best with our families in this country to move things in a better direction.
Yep. And I'll have your social media under comments. So everyone, you can just find Kelly, look in the comments, and directly her X account. That is where you'll find her. And the podcasts she goes into a deeper dive on topics that we have just discussed. You also have a Substack, so you can find all of that. The Substack is right there on your X account. So you can just if you're interested in this and you want to do a deeper dive, Kelly is the person to do it. I'll try and dig up that 2023, we have that on our YouTube. So I'll put a link to that under the comments as well, so people can watch the seminar. You can go, I'll link it to the momsforliberty.org. And if you go to momsforliberty.org and you go through our summits, you just click, there's going to be a link. You click on the link, the Joyful Warrior Summits, and you'll see that Kelly presented there. For 2 years, I think 2 years you did presentations, but 2023 was a very memorable presentation that you did. We were in Philadelphia and kind of the SPLC vibes. That's where we were swarmed and attacked by all their activists. But and you've been on you've attended numerous Moms for Liberty chapter meetings and spoke. So thank you so much, Kelly, for all that you do and that you continue to do, and to make us aware of this very heavy topic. Has very layered, but I think we've made it, at least in this, made it relevant that to be wary of this mental health kind of obsession right now. And there's a lot of funding that's going into this because of, there are some mental health issues with our kids. Social media, COVID, kind of the after effects of the COVID shutdowns and lockdowns, the insanity, the DEI insanity, what happened under the Biden-Harris administration for 4 years. And prior to that, we didn't even talk that much about how the Obama administration really laid the groundwork for all of this. The fundamental radical change in America started in the departments of education, the CDC. They knew what they were doing. So it was wicked, but there's an evil genius to it. The wickedness was deeply embedded. And that's why, while the Trump administration is fulfilling promises with executive orders and attempts to reduce the size and scope of the federal government in education, this stuff runs very, very deep. Even prior to the Obama administration, it's just the Obama administration. They really they knew what they were doing. My background's political. There were playbooks written about how to march through the institutions in the United States of America, and very brilliant minds. They accomplished their goal. They have control of American institutions. The bureaucracy, the structure, the funding mechanisms. This is very difficult things to unwind and unpack. These are very difficult things to do. And the work it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I know a lot of people want to see fast changes. But even in states like Florida, where you've got an amazing governor, you've got a GOP-controlled state legislature, you've got the will of the people behind you, teachers' unions are digging in their heels every day in Florida and making change laborious and difficult. So you have to have that sort of iron will, like you see statewide in the DeSantis administration, to affect change. And there's only so much the federal government can do in education. We don't want the federal government to have a lot of power over our state education. Even you're in California, it sucks. You wish that the federal government could just wave a magic wand, because it's a real struggle for in states like California, Illinois, in Minneapolis, and so many others. But there are limits to what the federal government can do. But what they do is they fund. There's a lot of federal funding that goes into these mental health programs, into human sexuality programs, CDC, all of that. So there is where defunding and starving the beast, that's what the federal government can do. And that's what they need to do. And that's what we must try to influence them to do. Of course, there are lawsuits, challenges that can slow the pace of change. But overall, I'm very pleased with the efforts of the Trump administration. It's a very difficult task that they're taking on. And I know that you are like, here I am. I'm willing to help. So anyone listening,
anytime.
Kelly's your girl. Like, she can really help you understand some of the complex frameworks that are in place and how to root them out.
I would fly to DC in a heartbeat, and I would love to meet with any of them. Because I'm seeing it on the ground. I see it on the ground, and many people will say, "Oh, that's California. That's just California." But and oftentimes I say, what happens in California doesn't stay in California, and it's like a fire. It's like a spark of a fire, and the winds are blowing east. And the ideas that oftentimes may originate here, or sometimes plenty of other places too, it is something that is growing and expanding out, because again, we're talking about these huge teachers unions and lots of political influence. You mentioned the Moms for Liberty National Summit in Philadelphia, and that was actually, even back then, I was surprised to learn that some of those protesters are professional protesters.
Oh, yes.
I was surprised to learn that some of the moms overheard these people talking about how much they were getting paid. That was foreign to me up until that point, surprisingly. But with regards to the educational matters that we're facing across this country, I do think awareness is our start, and then building that awareness amongst those who are our wonderful, public servants that are out there day in and day out working for the in their public service for the citizens. And so being able to bring those up and share with them is a wonderful opportunity. And then with regards to mental health, one last note about that is that it is a field that even some of our great mental health practitioners, I know one is Pamela, who has spoken and testified all across the country. And she has shared how this field of mental health has so significantly changed. And it makes it tough because if you're actually somebody going through something that would require some mental health support, it is difficult looking at this field and thinking, who do I go to for help if you're in that kind of need? And especially what we're observing with the field of school-based mental health, it is very much being operated through the lenses that we discussed, through these ideas of intersectionality. I remember in my observation of some of these apps that schools are contracting with in order for students to receive kind of digital mental health, seeing gender ideology all across the board of these mental health providers in our schools. But in addition to that, ideas being promoted like climate anxiety and whatnot. Now, I doubt that, some 6th or 7th grader or even a 9th grader, unless somebody has taught them something on that subject, it's not likely going to be their utmost top anxiety. It may not even make the mold, but just the content and material that some of these programs provide is introducing them to new anxieties. And one more thing I wanted to mention is that when you think of the field of mental health and social emotional learning in schools, even school-based clinics, it is important for us to be aware of the fact that in order for those school-based clinics to substantiate their own existence, the funding of their own staff, what do they require? They require a steady clientele. And when you think about social emotional learning, you have to understand, if it really is for kindness and conflict resolution, then you'd see this huge expansion of those benefits received and a reduction in need for services. With the school-based clinic, they're going to need that steady clientele to substantiate their existence, and marketing that to kids, or asking teachers to refer students to the school-based clinic, or asking school staff to give tours of the school-based clinic so that kids start to begin feeling comfortable even going in there, is all part of the marketing plan. And when I think of
the most activists, the biggest activists for the LGBTQIA plus curriculum, for secret policies where the school will have separate medical records for kids that are identifying as non-binary or gender fluid or transgender, that basic advocate for this gender ideology and DEI will be a school counselor. And I have heard stories where one school counselor can come in and just wreak so much havoc on a district, because oftentimes they'll be considered the expert that the superintendent will go to when it comes to how they should set up the framework for social emotional learning, and what should we make of the results of the student climate survey. They are very powerful, these school counselors. And lots of times they end up being the Title IX coordinator too. Or if they are not the coordinator, they are one of the liaisons, or counselors to the Title IX coordinator. So when you've got a very woke school counselor that is kind of an activist, that can cause a lot of trouble. And I have no evidence of this, but I would venture to say, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, when I see a small conservative rural school district that's suddenly exploding with secret policies that, about gender identity, bathroom policies that allow boys and girls bathrooms, the sudden infusion of DEI and curriculum, like that's comprehensive sexuality and nature, there is a new school counselor that can be found in these situations. And that, just that one person can wreak a lot of havoc.
Yeah, there's a lot of influence at these school-based clinics, and there's certainly designing some of the questionnaires. So if a student comes in for a non-sexual related manner, maybe they hit their head at PE or something like that, and they're being referred to the school-based clinic, they're oftentimes going to have questionnaires that ask them questions with regards to pronouns, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression. They might have a regular conversation with regards to sexual and reproductive health, even if they came because of another reason. And this is how kind of this change in health gets normalized. And understanding too, I didn't mention it yet in the conversation we're having, but I will mention it now. In the growth of not just the school-based health model and this idea of the WISC model from the CDC and ASCD for health equity, we also have the growth of community schools, either one of these working towards these wraparound services, and the growth of school-based health. And in so doing, the school-based clinic model, it's really important that people understand, again, the mother of the community schools movement is a title that was attributed to Joy Dreyfus, who worked at the Guttmacher Institute. And in her life, she accomplished quite a lot. She helped start the Center for Population Options in 1980, and today that is Advocates for Youth. Advocates for Youth is the organization that helped create the National Sexuality Education Standards. They are the organization that oversees amaze.org videos that
We've
some
talked
significant.
about that a lot.
Yes, and then it is out of the Advocates for Youth and Center for Population Options that this same woman, Joy Dreyfus, also helped advance an organization that was originally the National Assembly on School-Based Healthcare, and today under another name, School-Based Health Alliance. And so these organizations are helping build this school-based health model. They're helping with the conferences for them. They're helping with kind of the guidance documents and ideas for how they will run these clinics and trainings. And thereby, it's no surprise. This is sometimes why I call it the school to sterilization pipeline. Sometimes I refer to it as the school to Planned Parenthood pipeline. But when you think about health, when you think about mental health, when you think about any of the topics we discuss, social emotional learning, consent, sex education, anything, it is always who put this together, what organizations, what agendas are there, and how. How is this taught? How is this implemented? And under what mechanisms, what teachings, what other ideas are woven into this? And once we're made that awareness, then we can show that to others, and then we can really begin to open people's eyes to this, because sometimes even the proponents don't know. And once people start to realize what's really going on here, I know we only mentioned it briefly, that idea of sexual pleasure in the presentation I gave. It's because at the very top, there's an organization focused on pleasure that's working with the WHO, and that was mentioned in source documents I read from the International Planned Parenthood Group. And education is key. Information from original source documents is key. And then seeing what we may do to, because we're ultimately working to help strengthen and encourage the family. We're working to protect children and teens. We're working to advance education, and we're working to support and encourage and build friendships with good teachers and good school board members and staff too. So all that we can do, we're trying one day at a time. Like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And we're just here for the advancement of liberty and all those other important causes that are worth protecting, that are worth fighting
Yes.
for.
And you have to, when I was at the GOP state convention in Wisconsin this weekend, I spoke with someone who told me that at the Cambridge School District, again, a small school district in Wisconsin, that I'm looking through my notes right now, that there were surveys, end of year school climate surveys that asked kids, what pronouns do they use at school? Do they use different pronouns at school than they do at home? How do they identify? All of those kinds of questions. And that a therapist and social worker would pull kids out based on some of the answers to the survey or based on some self-identification in classrooms, pull kids aside before teacher conferences and ask, should we use a separate name, separate pronouns? Like, do we have permission to use your name, your given name, or, your, what they call their dead name, or do we use your new name, new pronouns, and they get permission and they keep separate records and have notes and, they keep track of this stuff. So it's happening. And again, I think a lot of times the school counselors and the so-called mental equity professionals that are on the campus of a school district are the kind of guardians of woke, and they are the loudest, and sometimes and that's difficult. It's difficult because they will use language, they will weaponize language like, oh, the kids will they'll harm themselves. If we don't do this, they're going to be dead. They're going to be unalived. We have to do this. Their mental health depends on this. So they weaponize empathy. No one wants to see a child suffering. No one wants to contemplate that a child could take their life. So that kind of language will have people kind of shut up and they won't stand. So what you have to understand is that kids have been coached to say these things. You and I have attended how many seminars with medical health professionals and detransitioners that will tell us exactly how they're coached, what the process is, that what they're told to say in order to get what they want. And then we know that the research is in, and that this is a house of cards, that a child's mental health does not improve with social transitioning or with medical transitioning. In fact, their health deteriorates, and they oftentimes they will be more likely to harm themselves. And frankly, I just read a study that stated definitively they don't know what's happening to kids and adults after they go through a transition. They're not being tracked properly. And lots of times they just fall off the radar. And, and so we know very little. And what we do know is not pointing in the direction of these activists. So you are doing more harm than good if you start to socially transition a kid. Social transitions lead to medical transitions, and medical transitions lead to lifelong health outcomes that are not good. They are not good. And we don't yet know how bad they are, but we have some insight because of the results we've seen from the NIH in Europe, because they have been doing this much longer, and they've shut down the whole program for youth. Like they are no longer encouraging this social transitioning and the medical transitioning of young people. So on that note, just because the number one issue that parents who are standing up against this are going to face, and I've just encountered this in New Richmond, where all we were trying to do is say, get boys out of the girls' bathroom. Well, they'll kill themselves. If they don't get to use the bathroom, they're going to kill themselves. And it was hard to walk the parents through this, because they felt a lot, they're worried, like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to say the wrong thing. But they're a lot more savvy now. Alvin Liu came in to talk. We talked, like, share some of your research, and then to understand that this is weaponized empathy. This isn't real. And the people that are saying these things are the activists, not the kids. The kids, for often, this is a cry for help when they start to identify as non-binary. And what they need is real. They need unconditional love from their parents and mental health therapy that is good. And that is becoming really hard to find, like you said. So that's another topic. That's another different topic, but.
Yeah, and it's challenging too, because when we think about social emotional learning, it is a focus on emotions in a school day. It is something that, it's very interesting, actually, that here, when I started, I was advocating for more physical recess time so that kids could run and move and play and climb and all of that. And it was replaced by adults deciding a program that was very much, now that I'm aware of it very well, it has an agenda. It's pushing a political and spiritual, sometimes, agenda. And in this, you think about the things that really help young people and adults alike. If you're having a rough day, ruminating continuously throughout your entire school day or work day or whatever it may be on feelings and emotions is going to shift your mind's focus. It's almost becoming its own form of meditation on feelings and emotions. Mm-hmm. And in the same way that social media, they see, if somebody's continuously scrolling and on social media and reading a lot of content, you see that the content out there that gets a lot of attention tends to be stuff that makes people have a strong reaction of shock or anger or, fear or some form of intensity of emotion. But what causes people to feel better is to take a break, go exercise. And it's interesting that very exercise is what was removed from the school day for approximately 10 minutes at the end of lunch, already short lunch recess, so that kids could just sit still more. Yep. I was one of those kids that, especially if it was a class where I wasn't feeling very challenged when I was younger, I was looking at that clock on the wall and thinking, when is this over? So that I could go and just be outside. So what helps with a lot of these challenges is getting away from rumination, actually accomplishing tasks and getting out and doing things, going for a walk, being out in nature. If you have a beach or a lake, go for a walk, go out into the forest, go to a gym, whatever it may be, and go and accomplish tasks and get things done. Volunteer places. Think about those less fortunate than yourself. These are things that, when I think back, I remember I ran into a school teacher of mine at the grocery store a few years ago, and he asked me what I remembered from his class, because he was very curious what, a whole segment of time teaching, what I remembered. And it is very interesting to think back on your school experience and think what stands out to you and what do you remember. And I will never forget some of the wonderful things that teachers did and what I do remember. Some of the things that I remember weren't even necessarily, I mean, I do remember some of my history teacher's lectures in high school because he was incredible at storytelling and he made history come alive. And then I do remember some of the opportunities when I was in upper elementary school to go and help families that were less fortunate. And those are memories that stick out to me, some of those special ones too, because we were making memories. We weren't just learning. We were making memories. We were doing something that was meaningful.
Touch grass,
but yeah.
get out, take a break. And in this case, take a social media break. Get your kids off of screens and really connect with them and show them just unconditional love. Say, I love you. But you are not, if you have a son that is saying, I think they might be a girl, I love you, but you are a male, you are wonderfully and beautifully made. And I'm here and I'm going to love you through this, but I'm not going to affirm something that I know that with time and with care and attention, you're going to be happy that you did not do anything medical that is irreversible. And every situation where I talk to a D-sister or a detransitioner where there was a parent that was just valiantly fighting, like Aaron Friday, valiantly fighting, or Aaron Lee in Colorado, for their child. And at the end, they have kids that are so grateful that their mom just refused to succumb to this spirit of the age. And they valiantly fought for the well-being and the health of their child. And at the end of it, they have very grateful children that feel like that they kind of were in a fog. And when they're finally through it, they're almost disassociate. Like it's hard to even remember what they were going through, why they felt that way. But they did. And it's a very real thing. What's happening to these kids is very real. Their minds are they're not well and they need help. And you can come through the other side without affirming this gender ideology, instead affirming your love for them, affirming their uniqueness, their individuality, understanding that there's no one way to be a girl or a boy, and that boys can be amazing chefs. Boys don't have to be locked into these gender roles. And that's the other thing that a lot of this does. Hey, if you're a girl and you like hanging out with your dad and you like working on cars and you don't like dresses, oh, you must be a boy. No. These rigid stereotypes that they say they abhor, but that this whole ideology perpetuates. That's another sort of contradiction. But
Right.
well, we've been talking for 2 hours now. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Kelly. So many different avenues. We could probably talk all day, and we'll definitely do it again. But I think that anyone who's watching understands that this is a complicated issue, but that when it comes to mental health, it is complicated. And because of that, it should not be a part of classroom curriculum. I don't think teachers want to be therapists. That's why they have to bring in these outside activist groups. And I don't think that parents want their teachers to be therapists to their kids. You don't go to school for therapy. You don't go to school, you go to a clinic, you go to a doctor, you go to a dentist, but you don't need to have all of that in a school. That's not a good idea. It's
Right.
It's a trap. It's a trap, like they say in Star Wars. Like, don't fall for it. Because what does the government do so well that you want them to do more? Like, what does the government do so well that you now want them to have this unfettered access to your child's brain, to their emotions, to basically shrinks in the classrooms. I mean, come on, like, we're not throwing parades because our public schools are doing so great. They aren't. So let's not give them more money and more influence and more power in our kids' lives. Let's reclaim that as parents. It is our responsibility and our duty to direct the upbringing of our children, and that includes their health and their mental health. Let's not give that over to someone else, because we will not be happy with the results, and it will cause great harm to our kids. And that's my last thing. What's your last word, Kelly?
I think that's a really important point, and I would agree with that entirely. The school model to make the schools into these hubs of wraparound services is a model that is going to erode parental notification and involvement. It's going to insert government into a role that's traditionally reserved for the family. And already in Virginia, with the new governor that was elected, she ran her campaign on a promise to expand community schools. And as soon as she was elected, Virginia Democrats introduced a bill to start exploring mental health screenings being required potentially in the future for grades 6 through 12. And we're used to seeing, especially here in California, the state in California mandated comprehensive sexuality education through the California Healthy Youth Act. Just a footnote on healthy and safe, and those words have been marketed terms that have been captured by those promoting other agendas. So when you hear healthy youth or you hear safe schools, just be wary of that, because it does not mean what you think it means. But going back to Virginia, we're used to seeing curricula get mandated, get started in the state as a bill, get passed, get signed into law. But if health enters, as much as it already has, continues to enter into the education atmosphere, then what Virginia is doing is something we all need to be attentive to. Because if they do mental health mandated screenings, then that is a health mandate. We're used to educational curricular content being mandated, but this is an entry point into mandating some form of mental health. And that, again, we're talking about mission creep, erosion of the family, and inserting government into a place that it has not been. Yeah. And this is something we must pay attention to and start advocating about, especially with regards to funding, policy, etc. We need to make the leaders, our public servants, aware so that they can act and do so diplomatically. Get out there, get involved. We have a republic if we can keep it. So tend to it.
If you can keep it, that's how the perfect way to end that. This is a republic if you can keep it. And one way, surefire way to lose it is to acquiesce on K through 12 education and to just kind of roll over and say, well, it's just too big, something too big. We can't tackle it. We can't win this. We absolutely can win this, because parents can, in this fight, parents can change everything. But we have to be aware and we have to be willing to stand up and fight.
Oh, thank you, Scarlett, for having me. Always a joy.
Thanks for coming on. It's always so wonderful to have you, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thank you too.
As always, that was a wonderful conversation with my friend Kelly. As a reminder, remember, parents, search your school district website. Look for social emotional learning, mental health literacy. Look for Learning for Justice, Southern Poverty Law Center, Advocates for Youth. Ask questions about human growth and development. Ask questions about restorative practices. Really do some digging about equity. What does that mean? What are the DEI programs? Who is your school counselor? Have some conversations with that person. Have some diplomatic, respectful conversations with all of your child's teachers. Make sure that you have opt-out forms and give them to every one of your child's teachers. Make sure that opt-out form is in the records. And hey, you know what? You could have a hard copy folded up and in your child's backpack if they're younger, so that if ever your child is told, hey, we don't have an opt-out on record, you're going to have to sit down and do this survey on a computer, that they can say, wait, go to my backpack. My mom has this. So there's no excuses for the administrators to force your child to do one of these climate surveys that we have said, don't do it. Look at the violence prevention programs, because that could just be a Trojan horse to bring in this little pizza diagram and have these conversations with your kids. Look into outside presenters. Ask who is going to be coming in to this school and giving presentations. And I want to know ahead of time when those presentations happen, who is going to be the presenter, what organization do they work for, and do your homework. Ask for receipts, and when you have them and you don't like it, make sure that you share them with other parents. If you have a Moms for Liberty chapter, great, because they can help you. You can always contact me, DM me. And if you are interested in learning more about Moms for Liberty, go to momsforliberty.org. That's moms, M-O-M-S, for F-O-R, liberty.org. And follow us on our social media. All of our media handles are at moms4liberty. So thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned. We always have some great new episodes on the way. Bye now, and God bless.